Dan
I'm
Perkins
going
from
to
America's
play a little
Cannabis
music
Conversation, and I'm here to talk to you.
and little intro. We're going to get ready to go live. I'm looking forward to this.
You see that black boy over there running scared? His old man at the bottom.
Okay, folks, welcome to the Reality Check with Charles Butler. We have a very special guest with us today. I am honored to have Miss Angela Saylor. She serves as Vice President of the Feulner Institute at the Heritage Foundation. She's a fellow there, as well as having worked in the White House for President George W. Bush. Angela and her husband, Elroy, are probably one of the most powerful Black couples in the United States of America. And you don't know about them because guess what? They are truly powerful and truly wheelers and dealers. I'd like to welcome you, Angela. How are you? It is so good to hear your voice.
Hi, Charles. It is so nice to hear your voice, and thanks for having me on. And I just want to say something about being powerful or not. You're only as powerful as your children say you are.
Well,
based on your ability to deal with their needs and to keep them on the straight and narrow.
Well, you do a great job of that. I know your parenting skills. So you are a hammer. I mean, girl, you seriously old school, okay? And I love you for it. I do. You're a great person, and but truly, it's really a privilege and pleasure to have you on today. And one of the things we touched upon and kind of talked about the last time we chatted was this CRT issue and how they're using race. Have you noticed, Angela? We've been in this political game a long time. And I tell you, I get tired of hearing all of these people talk about race and calling people racist who've never been called the N-word. And then I look at their networks and I go, where are the Black people? Everybody's calling everybody a racist, but nobody's hiring any Black people.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we have been on this road for a long time. But I'll tell you what, Charles, the tone of this iteration, I think has poked and revealed itself to be in a more dangerous place than ever before.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm really concerned about as we watch the debate in the public square and how this go round, our children are being pulled front and center in the middle of what I'm calling more of a political weaponized debate than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start seeing these tough issues begin to resonate into the classroom, and we see a pulling, if you will, of parents against teachers and kids in the middle of the pull over what mom and dad say and what's happening at school. And our kids are spending most of our time there. As a nation, we just need to stop and say, hold up, wait a minute.
Well, Angela, I'm glad that you went there. Because that's a battle that I've been fighting or trying to fight for over 30 years. The co-opting of our children's mind. I remember when I lived in San Diego, there was a man who was the national spokesman for the Ku Klux Klan. He lived in a city called Fallbrook, which was about 30 miles from downtown San Diego. And he was head of and the rule was, when I lived in San Diego, don't get caught at night in El Cajon, California, and don't get caught at night in Fallbrook, California. And I'm not talking about the 1950s. I'm talking about 1977. Okay. People were very clear. Don't get your butt caught in those two cities after dark. Okay. So this guy said, and I'll never forget, he came on TV doing one of his racist rants, and he said, Black people have done something that we couldn't do in a lifetime. You've given us your children's mind. And I thought, how true? Because I remember when schools were segregated. I remember I had friends who went to segregated schools in Pontiac, Michigan. And you're from Detroit. I mean, areas that there were all Black schools in Detroit, just because that's where all the Blacks live. Right. But we did well. I mean, we competed academically, we competed athletically. There was really, it was just a community against community. And this morning, Angela, I was out at Costco getting gas, and this man walked over and started talking to me, who works at Costco. He just started chatting, and he said, and I had on a Michigan hat, University of Michigan hat, and he said, "Oh, you from Michigan?" I said, "Yeah, I lived there, I grew up there, and I went to school there in Michigan." He said, "Oh, wow." He said, "I grew up in Detroit." I said, "Man, you're not from Detroit." He said, "Yeah, I'm from Detroit. I'm from the West Side." And he went on. I went to Chelsea. I was one of 5 white boys in Chelsea.
Yeah.
So
see, that goes to tell you, experience and culture are a huge component of people being able to understand each other and relate to one another. Let me tell you a quick story, and I promise I'm not going to tell a long, drawn out story.
Okay.
But a friend of mine who does pretty well asked a plumber to come over and help out with his dishwasher. And the friend is a Black American, the plumber is a white American. And they got to talking, and the plumber said to the friend, "You seem like you're a lot like me. You're trying not to spend any extra money because you thought you could do it yourself. And it's apparent to me that when you discovered the part that you didn't have was going to cost more than having me come, you called me." And so that little conversation broke the ice, and they found a common denominator in terms of a value set.
Right.
And they started talking about race.
Right.
And the conversation was, my family had a Confederate flag, and I think maybe your friends have the Black Lives Matter flag. And the question was, what's the difference in the two? Because each flag means something to the other. Mm-hmm. Now, not getting into the nuances of that or how eloquently the conversation went or not, two things happened.
Okay.
Each man was willing to hear the other person out and had decided to not take offense because they had something in common, which was being frugal.
Right. Well,
And when they got to the end of the conversation, they didn't agree 100% with one another. But what they agreed was that people have got to sit down and talk.
Right. Well, the Black Lives Matter movement and flag means absolutely nothing to me because it's a farce. One. Two, if he used an analogy of the Republic of New Africa flag, maybe, but no. I only have one flag, and that's the United States of America flag.
But now listen, let's just get real about this thing. Regardless of what the guy said, he was trying to have a conversation,
right?
In order to get to a place of understanding,
right?
Right?
Right.
And if my Black friend had tried to redirect the type of flag or push back on it, the conversation would have broken down.
Okay.
And it wouldn't have gotten to the real message, which is we have our reasons and our perspective based off of the life we've lived.
Right.
But we're willing to come together and have a conversation about it to better understand it.
Yeah.
And not to immediately look at each other as if we're the enemy. And see, that's the problem with critical race theory. As we're looking at something that's not critical in thinking whatsoever, it's indoctrination of pressing upon kids that somebody in the classroom, depending on the color of their skin, that they're oppressed. And somebody in the classroom, depending on the color of their skin, is an oppressor. And what we know, and we just know this. We know this because we have lived life. Who would wish upon anyone they knew to give them the bigotry of low expectations?
Right.
That there's nothing you can do in your life,
Right.
in this great country we call America,
Right.
right? In order to realize your dreams, your aspirations for the future.
Well, you know,
And who would say to somebody that all you can do and all you're capable of doing is stepping on somebody else's head and making them feel like nothing?
mm-hmm.
There's nothing about that that's healthy or productive.
Absolutely not. And I have seen and heard of such bizarre antics with this critical race theory curriculum. It's absolutely asinine what these people are doing with race and about race. And like I said, it's not black people, it's white people. You know, these are the people who are, you know, putting together these bizarre exercises in racism. And I'm going, what the heck? And so that's why you see these black parents standing up saying, are you nuts? I don't believe in this craziness, you know?
Right.
Right. But it's these liberal, progressive, experimental types that are destroying basically the very fabric of this country. And when I talk to people all the time about being conservative, most black people say, well, you're trying to conserve what white supremacy, you're trying to conserve what the white man has created for himself. And I said, no, bro. That's not conservative values. And I go through exercises of what conservatism is and conservative values. And they go, wow, well, that's me. I'm like, yeah, black folks are politically and socially conservative. We don't believe in all this political correctness and this new LGBTQ. We don't believe. We're Christian people. You know, we're just simple Christian people who believe in God, the flag, and this country. And we've always believed in God, the flag, and the country since before the inception of this thing called the United States of America, which was formally created in 1776. You know, I read the president's commission report on 1776. I read it several times, actually. And I was really, really impressed with it in a number of respects. Because I have always been a person. You know, I went to all white schools in Pontiac, by the way, Angela. So when I was there, you know, I was like, you know, out of 30 kids in the classroom, there were like 3 black folks. You know, when I got to high school, we constituted like out of 3,000 kids, we were like, I think we were like 5%. So we were never really. You know, I always had a lot of white kids that I grew up with, and it was always embarrassing to me to have Black History Week because the only thing they talked about was George Washington Carver and the peanut. Well, my mother had gone to black schools, right, in the South. And so she said, oh, baby, you know, we created more. We had great scientists. We didn't just create the peanut. I said, well, Mom, what do black people create? She said, like the traffic light, like Garrett Morris. I said, a black man created this traffic light? She said, yeah. She said, when you cut on that light every morning, who you think created the filament? I said, Thomas Edison, of course. She said, no, baby. No. That was Lewis Latimer. He worked for Thomas Edison. I said, oh. So when I would go and talk about these things in high school, in junior high school, the teachers would call me a lie because it had not been printed anywhere. You could not find it anywhere, and in a textbook, I should say, unless you did some real research. You could not find that black people. The Tuskegee Airmen. They were in World War II. I went I graduated from high school in 1970. People hadn't heard of Tuskegee Airmen. When I said that I wanted to be a fighter pilot, people told me that Negroes didn't fly, and that's what we call ourselves then. The blacks we didn't fly. We don't fly airplanes. The black folks don't fly. I said, what about the Tuskegee Airmen? They said, what's Tuskegee Airmen? There's nothing. What are you talking about? And I explained to them who they were. People had no idea. And still today, well, they're becoming more popular today, but they've all died off. When I got out of service, or when I went in service in 75, I met a number of them. They were still living. They were still young. And they were still trying to get their story published. But it's about history. I'm in Costco Saturday, and I'm talking to a lady who said she had a shirt on, proud to be an American. And I just mentioned to her, we're waiting on food. I just mentioned to her, I'm proud to be an American too. And so we started talking. And you know what she said to me, Angela? After I finished talking to her, I said, do you know who the first American to die in the American Revolution was? She said, no. I said, it was a black man named Crispus Attucks. She said, really? I said, yeah, they still celebrate his holiday in Boston. She said, oh my God, I didn't know that. I said, you remember Bunker Hill, right? I said, that was in the Boston Massacre that he died. He was shot. I said, do you know anything about Bunker Hill? She said, yeah, that was, when the Patriots lost that war, it was a big fight. I said, yeah, but there were two heroes at Bunker Hill, and they were both black men. One was Peter Salem, and the other was Salem Poors. And then I broke it down that Teddy Roosevelt wasn't at San Juan Hill. Those were black men who fought that battle. And I told her about this new ship that Trump commissioned called the Dory Miller. And I told her the history of Dory Miller. She said, I'm getting, she and her husband, by this time her husband had come up. She said, I'm getting chill bumps. I just love you. She gave me a big hug. She said, that's America. That's what makes us great. And it is. Nobody talks about that this guy Trump has a ship called Dory Miller, named after a seaman. Those ships are named after presidents of the United States.
Oh my goodness. Well, back to your point about conservatism, the great Kay Cole James was speaking to some, incredible young scholars, black males going to different academic centers across the country. Some of them are at the Ivies. And she was having a conversation with them about conservatism. Okay. And I just love when she said, there's nothing about it that's weird or strange or odd. Let me just break this down for you. It's what my grandma taught me.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I just love the way she talks about that, because it's like, I didn't become this. I was raised this. Right. I didn't wake up one day and put on a coat and I made myself conservative. And it was so interesting how the young men were leaning into her conversation about that and starting to examine their own lives as she articulated some basic concepts, like, when you talk about spending, right? And that you just shouldn't spend more money than you have. And you shouldn't spend all the money you have. You should save some of it. They're shaking their heads. Yes, yes, yes. You want to get up each day and you want to chart your own course in terms of opportunity. You don't want the government telling you to what degree you can dream, or to what degree your earnings can expand or grow. Shaking their heads. And so I back to your point on conservatism in terms of those values that we talk about, and kind of from a common sense standpoint of things that just make practical sense about the way to approach life. And integrating that conversation into one of being proud of the legacy of your ancestry, I think are so key. Because even talking about what happened on American soil, it's important to have that conversation about what happened on the continent of Africa. If we short the story and only begin it at the time of stepping on to the Americas, if you will, then our children are still not going to have the whole story in the perspective that they need in order to be able to really process the world that they're in.
Right.
And I just, one of the things that we do at Heritage and in the institute that I run, we have a center called the Center for American Studies. And I just encouraged all Americans, I don't care what color you are, to understand world history and to also pay close attention to Western civilization and Western history as a whole, because it connects you back to the rest of the world.
It does.
And our kids need to understand those connections to better appreciate the world that we live in and how it has evolved over time, and truly to be able to appreciate America.
Because it is truly a wonderful country with all of our blemishes, with all of our hiccups. We still manage to correct ourselves and keep going. But I would really like to see, and I think under President Trump, we would have seen a turnaround in these textbooks. I don't think that there should be a Black history and a white history. I think that Black history is American history. Like I just talked about the American Revolution. Throughout history, Black people were there. It's like now they talk about Jack Daniels was created by a Black man. Okay. I'm with that. I knew, there must have been a reason I was a Jack drinker, Didn't know it was in the genes of the liquor, But
oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, no, but we're talking about textbooks. I think to parents, all parents, people who serve in a role of giving guidance to kids, people who are looking at what children are being taught. We know COVID really put a lot of people on notice to pay attention to what's coming across the computer. But one of the things that I am just like standing on top of my head about is that I believe families, in order for us to overcome these challenges that we're talking about with history and civics, families are going to have to view this as an issue that should be addressed in the home first.
Right.
Because making that a central part of the home conversation and the teachings of the home, equip our kids with how to deal with the world as it decides to serve it to them, and equips them and empowers them to be able to reject it.
Exactly.
They don't agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we are pushing along that narrative of the power of the family in these conversations. And there are incredible resources out there. Bob Woodson, our luminary Bob Woodson, he's got 1776 Unites with a curriculum that is really trying to make the whole story there, the good, the bad, the ugly, but into a place of promise for the future, versus a place of striking down and saying that there is no hope. Hillsdale College has a new curriculum as well, and they're calling it 1776.
Right.
And you're starting to see, back to your point of these different writings that are coming about as a result of the national debate we're having on CRT. And so my grandma always told me to make lemonade out of lemons. And so no matter how much we don't like this and how tired we are of these conversations, I'm just encouraging all of us to make lemonade out of the lemons. And I see, more people stepping up and in conversation and doing more critical thinking about how to tell the story of America so that it feels inclusive and it begins to fill the void that those who are innocently falling into the traps of CRT are looking for. And I think it's important for us to take note of that. There is a void, and we can't let CRT be the answer to it.
It's not the answer. It is antagonistic. It's not well thought out. I think it's hurtful. I mean, how can you tell a kid who knows nothing about slavery, who has Black friends, who considers themselves a good person, wants to be a good person, how can you tell them they're racist? I mean, I mean, unless they are,
Mhm.
I mean, because I had friends like that too, who would come and tell me, they'd say, "Hey," because I don't know if you knew this or not, Angela, but Pontiac was the head of the Ku Klux Klan in the North, so they had
Mhm.
Klan rallies around the city. So
Mhm.
my friends, guys who were my friends, they would come to me and they'd say, because I had to walk home from school, I had to walk home, along this long kind of dark highway. And my friends would say to me, "Hey, Butch, be careful, man. There are a lot of
Mhm.
crazy people out here." And I'm like, "What do you?" I was a kid, right?
Mhm.
We were all
Mhm.
kids. I'm like, "So,
Mhm.
what are you talking about?" They said, "There's some people out here who don't like black people, man. They just,"
Mhm.
and I didn't realize until I got older that they were talking about their parents.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
but
Oh my goodness.
to your point about the family, um, in that 1776 commission report from the President Trump, there was a quote in there, and it said, "The seminary of the Republic, according to Cicero, the Roman
Mhm.
philosopher, that it's the habits and morals that are at the base of making a society what it is." To your point, I mean,
Mhm.
we have destroyed, and we have allowed the black family to come under so much pressure and to be destroyed that um, how do we turn that around? I know it's really strange under Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, families, period, but especially black families, more people started getting married. There were less out of wedlock births because of the policies that Clinton and Newt Gingrich put in place.
Mhm.
And then we had uh, Bush come in after that, and he maintained, that control on welfare and all that other stuff. But then all of that went away with the Obama administration, and we got back to liberal policies that allowed people to be paid money for having babies out of wedlock
Mhm.
without working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's go from Cicero to Reagan. Let's just make a big leap over time.
Okay.
And so Reagan reminds us, right, that freedom is just not passed down in the bloodstream. So
Right.
we've got to get up each day and fight for it. We've got to be intentional about it. And so when we look at policies at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, when we look at those policies, we got to understand that, leadership changes and who we vote into office to represent us in terms of how those policies are going to be written is extremely important. And it's even more important to understand the dynamic of what the tenets of those policies need to be in order for it to look like we want our lives to look like,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And to your point about welfare, I mean, if anybody reads the story after stories and the narrative after narrative of people who are on welfare, black, white, anybody who's on welfare will tell you that is not the way they would like to go.
Right.
And as you peel back and start to discover why, you hear the crying of this takes away my humanity.
Right.
It limits my decision making around my ability to get what I can tangibly see at this moment as a security going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you peel it back even more, you begin to hear the stories of people who were not initially on welfare but needed welfare temporarily, and then they couldn't get out of the cycle of it, right?
Right.
Because that system of welfare is anti free. It's anti progress towards building wealth, towards being able to expand and grow your capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you enter the welfare world and you have property, you've got to sell it in order to qualify. I mean, and the stories just go on and on and on and on. So if our policymakers are just listening to the people who are on the welfare roll
Mm-hmm.
and paying attention to them,
Mm-hmm.
screaming that this is not working for a healthy life, and the private sector, civil society has to continue to stand up and show the alternatives,
Mm-hmm.
so that those alternatives feel as real as that welfare distribution that happens
Mm-hmm.
in the month.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, I told you I had read the commission report that President Trump put out, and you had paraphrased a quote by Ronald Reagan, and I just want to read the quote for you in full. And it says, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We
Mhm.
didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States of America, where men were free." Amazing. Amazing.
Amazing. And whenever I hear the quote read in full, or I think about it, I see myself sitting on the front porch with my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
rocking
Mm-hmm.
as the moon is coming, as you're able to see the moon with some
Mhm.
ice water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the stories that she's told me, like the stories your mom has told you about the different incredible leaders
Mm-hmm.
who have contributed to America.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear about things like CRT, and I get up and have to be in that battle, I can see her eyes. And I look and I remember and I say, I'm standing on her shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is up to me to continue to push forward so that the shoulders that my grandchildren stand on one day are taller than the ones I got to stand on. But at the same time, they're able to benefit from the strength of those shoulders of hers,
Mm-hmm.
all the way through my mom to me, to my children, to them. And I think if we all just kind of think about that from the standpoint of what we have to contribute to society, that we're trying to build a better place for not just ourselves or our children, but our grandchildren, our posterity.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that we get up each day and approach it would be slightly different than if we get up looking for somebody to fight, somebody to blame, or somebody to step on. And most of those sentiments come from a prism of bad politics.
It does. But
Bad politics.
it does. And Angela, I have never in my lifetime seen the kind of division, seen the kind of nonsensical approaches to the public arena, the kind of oppression of mindset and thinking. When I got to Chicago in 97, I moved from San Diego to Chicago to get married in 97. And I would talk about Mayor Daley at cocktail parties. And the black people would say this. These are the so-called black elites. You can't say that about Mayor Daley. You can't talk about him like that. And I'll go, wait a minute. This dude's daddy drove a freeway down the middle of the most prosperous black city in the country at the time, State Street. What are you talking about? I said, this is a guy who refuses to protect the people in the neighborhood. And this was a big thing with Daley when Daley was in the last Daley.
Mm-hmm.
The black people were complaining they didn't have enough police in their community. And he would come on television and proudly proclaim, well, if I move police out of the neighborhoods that don't have crime into the neighborhoods who have crime, then the crime would go up in those neighborhoods. Now that's a lie, because they would have like 100 guys in a district, and they'd have 3 calls a night. They're in. So now you go to the black districts. Let's say there are 3 black districts. They got 50 cops in each district, and they're handling hundreds of calls a night. So we broke it down, Angela, we just broke it down, said, okay, how many calls are these other districts getting? Well, they get 3 calls a night. Well, how many calls is the 15th district? Well, they get 250 calls. How many shootings do they have? Oh, they have like 4 or 5 shootings. How many shootings are on the north side? We didn't have any. We haven't had any in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things. And then we look at today, what's going on today in this defund the police and what's going in Chicago when President Trump said to Lori Lightfoot, who was at that time the mayor of Chicago, we were having these riots last summer. And I live downtown. So I lived exactly a block from where they were rioting. I could see out of my high rise, I could see the people knocking windows out, bursting windows, throwing rocks at cops. I saw the whole thing. In fact, I was going to go down and take pictures for the show, and something said, fool, you better keep your behind right up here where it's safe. And I mean, it was lawless. And so I used to tell the police when they would line up, I said, man, look, y'all need to get in that behind tonight. Don't let them come up here. And they just laugh. But because their hands were tied. And so Lori Lightfoot said to President Trump last summer, and this was in the headline in the paper, and it read like this: I'm saying to Trump and his help, and it had asterisk, 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 you. I'm like, wait a minute. She did not say that to the president of the United States, but she did. And now she's begging Joe Biden for help. And so they just sent a task force. And I don't know if you know this, Angela, but I moved from Chicago to Tampa, Florida.
Oh my goodness. So how long have you been in Tampa?
About 2 months.
Okay.
And I moved for 3 reasons. I just keep it short. People, politics, and policies. The politicians and policies. I mean, Angela, we were paying 7 cents for a grocery bag. So if you didn't take your own bag, you had to pay 7 cents. Okay. They implemented a policy in June, at the first of the year, where if you were on a city street where there were cameras and you were doing 6 miles over the speed limit. So if it was 30 and you were doing 36, you got a $35 ticket that you couldn't fight. I was like, I'm like, no. Charles Butler, and then the killing, Angela, they were shooting people downtown at stoplights. So you pull up to a stoplight and some young black kid would pull up and shoot you because you didn't know gang signs. And they were and the carjackings, they were carjacking people. And the cops used to tell me this all the time. They put a carjacker in jail. The guy would come up, carjack someone with a gun. And the kid would be out on the street in 24 hours. That's the kind of madness that we have going on in our society today.
Well, it's so many sides of the story, when we start to really talk about crime and we talk about the justice system, it's so many components working together, and it's so complex. And I think we just do ourselves a disservice when we get it narrowed down to a couple of talking points, a couple of bullets, right?
Right.
And I don't mean bullets literally, but items. As that came out of my mouth, I was like, no pun intended there at all. But there's so many dynamics to these conversations.
Right.
I was in Maryland not too long ago. I live in Virginia, and I was in a lower income neighborhood. I stopped over because I was trying to get a card, a graduation card for someone. And I was like, let me pick up a couple of other items. So I'm going down the aisle and I'm noticing that the items I wanted were locked. And it wasn't tobacco. There was nothing about these items that you should be restricted to adult purchase or anything like that.
Okay.
And I started scratching my head. I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, I can't shop like this.
Right.
Where I've got to go to the front of the store and say, excuse me, may I have permission to touch the item I want to buy? And
Right.
can you unlock it for me
Right.
so that now I can purchase it?
Right.
And I started thinking about, what does that do for the psyche of a kid?
Right.
What does that do? I mean, we're talking about Reagan and freedom. What kind of message does that send to the kid who has to get permission to touch something to purchase it versus the kid who can pick it up and go to the checkout counter and buy it?
And can read several cards and not be bothered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when you start thinking about the debates we're having, and you really start to peel back the onion on the psychology of what's happening in people's day-to-day lives around some of these issues,
right,
that we don't get to because we're way up here at the top of them, it makes you pause, and it makes you just say, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness.
So
I mean, I just can't imagine my kids having to ask to be able to buy some gum.
Well,
instead of just being able to purchase it.
I saw a guy in a store in a Walmart in Chicago. He picked up several appliances and just walked out of the store. I mean, like, one was a toaster oven and he had some other appliance, right? So when so I'm standing there waiting in line to check out, and I see this guy just walk right past me. He didn't get in line. He just walked out the door, and the security guard just looked at him. I'm like, man, this is getting ready. Something getting ready to jump off here, right?
Right.
And the guy just, I looked at the security guard. He looked at me, and he just hunched his shoulders. And then I remembered that the prosecuting attorney said in Chicago, she said, if you steal and it's not over $900, we are not going to prosecute you.
Oh, my goodness.
So now, Angela, when you see Black people walk in a store, like we have a street called Oak Street. It's like Fifth Avenue in New York. All the high-end fashion, people get seriously paranoid because you can arrest the person, call the police, take them to jail, whatever, but nothing's going to happen. So they just leave them alone. They just let them walk out of the store.
I mean, there's so many issues intertwined with all this stuff. Then you start talking about the marketplace and what is the owner to do in order to protect the merchandise, right?
Right.
And then you look at the continued side effects of what's going to happen from the action of the innocent who are engaging with that particular store or that community. And just how these things are just also intertwined and so complicated.
Angela, I was sitting in a restaurant. I don't know if you've ever gone to Gibson's in Chicago, but I don't think so. It's a steakhouse, and it's where everybody kind of goes. Like, you'll see, ball players there, and people from out of town who are dignitaries. They stay in that area. You might go in there and see somebody from Empire having dinner. So, so I was sitting there several years ago, and I was having dinner with a friend. And as I turned to look out the window, I'm looking at the crack of this boy's behind. And I got so angry. So I got up and I went over. They set them at a table. I went over and said, young man, do you think that Martin Luther King marched so you could walk in here showing the crack of your behind? And he looked at me and he said, no, sir. I said, think about it, man. You need to, clean up your act. I mean, that may be good in the hood, but, you don't see people dressed like that around here. Just because you had the money to come in, I mean, you're embarrassing the race, dude. And I turned around, went back to the table. And so the people who were with me said, man, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? I said, because he needs to know. I'm sure. And so the young man got up with his 5 or 6 people, and he walked back by, and he came over. He put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Thank you, sir," and they walked out. And so,
see now, if you take the act of honesty that you gave him, right, and his willingness to listen, I mean, that's the power of caring about your fellow man. Because I don't think you told him that to embarrass him. You told him that to help him.
Well,
and in helping him and having a good intention, he was able to receive it.
Yeah, well, it could have gone south now.
But it didn't.
Well, I'm glad it didn't, Angela.
But it didn't. So what would you have done had it gone south?
I would have had to deal with it. But I mean, I was so embarrassed that, I mean, literally, I mean, can you just picture this in your mind? You sitting there eating this gorgeous steak, and you're having a wonderful conversation, and then I turn and I'm looking at this boy's butt. I'm like his naked butt. I'm going, wait a minute. Wait one doggone minute. This might be cool on the street, but he right here in my face with my food, okay?
So, Charles, had he been white, would you have done the same thing?
Real quick, because he's perpetrating.
See, we gotta love our young people all the same. No matter the color of their skin, they need guidance, right?
They do.
They need guidance.
But you said, would I have done it? Oh yeah, no question. No question. I mean, this was, I'm sorry, Angela, excuse my vernacular, but this was naked booty, okay? I'm like, this is okay in the locker room. I can deal with it. Okay. I'm an old jock. I can deal with the locker room,
But see, to me, that speaks to what we have to do as the mature people of society when we see young people, again, doing things that are not in their best interest or the best interest of society, of being able to walk up or step up or speak up and say something in a manner to get them to think about it.
Well, I didn't want to hurt his feelings, but that was the thing that came to my mind. Martin Luther King marched, got beaten so that we could come into restaurants. There was a time in Chicago when blacks couldn't come in these restaurants in Chicago. And I'm not talking about a long time ago. When I was in college in the 70s, there were certain restaurants downtown Chicago that we couldn't go in. My girlfriend lived in Chicago. You go in the Playboy Club, and they had wonderful food besides the eye candy. But I mean, I was with my girlfriend, so and her mama. So I really couldn't look like I wanted to look because But anyway, but there were restaurants really that you couldn't, that you didn't go in. There were areas that you didn't go to in the 70s in Chicago, and now everything's open. You can go anywhere you want. So all I say is, respect the people, respect where you are, respect the establishment, put some clothes on. I mean, but let me tell you another quick story. It has nothing to do with food. Gwen and I lived on Michigan Avenue in front of the Art Institute. So I was crossing the street one day going to the Art Institute. It was in the summer, and there were a bunch of tourists out. So I come up to the stoplight, and I'm standing next to this white woman who has 2 strips of cloth going across the breast of her, the nipples of her breast. And I'm looking, I'm going, what is that? What she needs to put some clothes on. So she looked at me and said, "What you looking at?" I said, "Some breastises." She looked at me, she said, "Well, you need to quit staring." I said, "You need to put some clothes on. I'm an all-American boy. I'm a red blood all-American boy." And the people, and Angela, the people, these are mostly white people, they were cracking up. They were laughing so hard they could barely walk, right? And And this one woman said, "Yeah, she need to put some clothes on." I said, "No, she don't. She can leave them on." And they were laughing harder. The guys were laughing. Oh, everybody was cracking up. They were cracking up.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, but but that's
Yeah.
America, you know?
Yeah, that's America. It's the stories we have just from going out and just trying to do something like go to the store or go get something to eat are amazing.
They are.
And
they never
yeah,
stop.
they are amazing. And they never stop. They never stop.
And, I always try to, I try to go places and be conservative, and kind of blend in, but it never really happens. So,
I wonder why.
yeah. I was in Costco the other day, and there was a young couple, and I was saying, "You can't get this dresser in your car." And they said, "No, but we can get it in our Jeep." I'm like, "Oh, okay, right." And I said, "Well, do you want to hear a quick story?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we want to hear a quick story." So I said, "Well, once my water heater burst, and I went to Home Depot to get a new water heater, and we wheeled it out to the curb, and it was still in the box." And I said, I drove my little Saab up. I had a Saab 9000 turbo. And the guy looked at me like, "Yeah, you going to get this in this? Right. You going to get this in the car? Sure." I said, "Hey, you think I can get this in, dude?" He's like, "No, man, you can't get it in." I said, "Well, I bet you $20 I can." He said, "You won't." So we gave our money. We gave the money to the other guy standing there to help us put the water heater in. I said, "And I'm even I don't need your help to put the water heater in." So I opened the trunk, let the seats down. I pushed the water heater in and slammed the hatch and grabbed the money out of his hand. And the guy looked at me and said, "Man, that was worth the $20." So every time I would come to Home Depot, they would get on the PA system and say, "Transformer Man is in the store. Transformer Man is in the store."
Oh, that is amazing.
That's too funny. But anyway,
that's
Angela,
amazing.
It has been a privilege and pleasure to talk to you. I didn't mean to keep you all this time, but I'm getting these. I'm getting these chats on my YouTube. I do this on YouTube, and I'm getting these. People are calling it an excellent show, a great show, and they really appreciate you. So it has been.
Well, thanks for having me. And it is always a pleasure to be able to just have a good old conversation with you.
Well, I miss you and Elroy. I tell you, you're two of my favorite people. I should call more often, but you guys are two of my favorite people. And, I know that your children are probably empty nesters now, right?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, so I know you got to go, but yes, but both of the kids are at West Point. My son started this summer, and we are going up. He's a plebe, and he's doing the march back on August 9th. So we're going to go scream and just say, "Oh my God, you made it out of beach."
That's great.
But yes, we are empty nesters, so we've got to get together soon.
That's true. Well, I'm telling you, Tampa is... I love Tampa. As a friend of mine said, who I speak to often, she's like, "I haven't heard you say one bad thing about Tampa." I said, "Well, so far there's nothing bad to say."
Now, you do know that I was raised in Gainesville, Florida, right?
No, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. So you're not too far from where I was raised.
Yeah.
Well, Gainesville, Florida.
No wonder you're such good people. And the thing, my father's from Florida. So I used to spend a lot of time in Florida, in Defuniak Springs, Florida, actually up in the Panhandle between Tallahassee and Fort Walton Beach and Pensacola. So and I went to flight school in Pensacola as a naval officer.
Okay.
So
all right.
But those stories that you talk about, my father always said that we came from Haiti. And I couldn't make the connection because you never read about slaves coming from Haiti to America. Well, what I've discovered in my research for my book is there were a whole bunch of slaves that were brought to Florida who worked on the plantations and who escaped and lived with the Seminole, and they were from Haiti. These stories have been passed down in my family, and my father's trying to pass it to my dumb behind. I'm going, "Dad, Haiti of all, how'd you make that connection?"
Right.
But we never, that's the thing, Angela. we never, or well, at least in my situation, I just happened to stumble across this history of these Haitians being brought to Florida and working on plant. I mean, who would know? I mean, who would guess? Because because the history that we know, everybody, they'd land in Richmond and they'd be bought in Richmond and disseminated across the South or whatever. But Georgia and Florida is where my folks are from in the South, and my mother was from Arkansas. So it's been it's an interesting combination in that Cedric the Entertainer, right? That's my cousin. And,
my goodness!
And when he did this thing about going homecoming, he did a movie called Homecoming, and he went back to Caruthersville, Missouri. Well, I used to go to Caruthersville, Missouri as a boy. In fact, my great grandfather is a legend in Caruthersville.
Oh my goodness!
I ran into a guy in Meridian, Mississippi, where I was going to flight school, and he said, "Where you from?" I said, "I'm from Michigan, man." He said, "Well, I'm from Caruthersville, Missouri." I said, "You from Caruthersville?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You know Elbert Parker?" He said, "Oh man, Elbert Parker." Yeah. I said, "Yeah." He carried a gun in his coveralls. He said, "Yeah." He carried one in his coveralls, carried one on his ankle. Oh yeah, everybody know Elbert. Oh man, Elbert Parker.
Well, when we catch up, we need to do the Arkansas tracing, because my mom is from Arkansas too.
Oh wow, it's amazing. Great people. I tell you, we have such a great history in this country. And one of my bookers called me yesterday, and he put this young man on the phone who claimed to be a Black Israelite. And this guy began to tell me that I didn't know my nationality. He said, "Well, what's your nationality?" I said, "Well, I'm a Black American." He said, "Well, man, you a Black American?" I said, "Yeah." And he went on to tell me how I was being something. And I said, "Dude, I mean, I was a naval officer." "Oh, you work for the man?" I said, "You damn right. I serve my country." I said, so we get into this quick argument. And I said, "Jerry, get this guy off the phone." I mean, I couldn't really. Anyway, we had an interesting discussion about, because I do this thing about Black Hebrews and Black Jews, and a lot of it has to do with the people who came out of Ethiopia and went to Israel, and Israel wouldn't allow them in the 80s, and the UN made Israel take these Jews in, and what they discovered was these Jews from Ethiopia were more orthodox than the most orthodox Jewish practice in the world. So it was, like I said, our history, and like you were saying, Black history didn't just start with bringing us to these shores.
Right.
I mean, the whole world history is just so fascinating, and that's what I want our children to learn. Black, white, brown, it doesn't make it. We need to spend more money on educating our children and making history interesting than. And I tell you, wherever I have gone to lecture or speak to different classes, the teachers always say, "Man, they've never paid attention like this before."
Yeah. I know.
But it's all about telling the truth.
Telling the truth. Right. And the truth will stick.
Well, Angela, you guys.
And the truth is not a fad. It doesn't change 10 minutes after you say it. It sticks around.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's just like Ed Feulner. And, Ed's a great guy. I haven't spoken to him in several years now. But if you speak to him anytime soon, tell him I said hello. And certainly tell your wonderful husband I said hello, okay?
I will do that. And let's be in touch soon.
Thank you so much for being with us, Angela.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Miss Angela Saylor, folks. That's my girl. She worked for President Bush. And she worked for President Bush, and she worked in the White House. Her office was in the White House, okay? So when you guys talk about Obama having Black people in the White House, he didn't have many Black people in the White House. Not as many Black people as George W. Bush. Okay. or throughout the government who were in control. Interesting. So, man, that was great. That was a great show. I'm just rolling here, so I'm gonna roll, and I'm going to talk about something that folks are talking about today that we should probably talk about, and that's the COVID-19 invasion with these illegals. We're talking about making Americans wear masks, and they're letting people in the country who are COVID positive, right? How crazy is that?
What I'm asking the Homeland Security Secretary to do is to tell me and the American people, of the million people you've what I'm asking the Homeland Security Secretary to do is to tell me and the American people, of the million people you've apprehended, how many of them have been released into the United States? How many of them do you test? What's the positive rate? What's the system in place to test people before they're released into the United States?
Tom Homan is the former acting director of ICE and a Fox News contributor. Tom, take a listen to Congressman Cuellar. He was on Fox and Friends. He represents this area. He's a Democrat. Watch.
In the Valley, there were 70 agents that have tested positive. In the Laredo area, another 15. It's not only the agents, but it's also their families when they go home. So we have to prioritize our men and women of Homeland, and we have to prioritize definitely the border communities.
Wow. That's deep. These people are taking home measles, tuberculosis, all the diseases that we had eradicated. They're being taken home by Border Patrol. Nobody's talking about it. They had 21 people on the Border Patrol die from COVID. This has to stop, folks. You know, I am tired of the game playing, and I know you probably are too. But we're going to do something about it. And I don't know what, but something's got to be done. Joe Biden is not doing his job, which is protecting the American people. We have an invasion on the southern border that's been largely created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We know Kamala Harris got busted talking about, well, I've been to the border. He said, no, you haven't been to the border. Well, I haven't been to Europe either. I didn't say that. Kamala did. But let's listen to this.
Well, Representative Cuellar is a patriot. You know, he put politics aside and he's telling the American people the truth. And he's right. You know, and thank God for asking this question. I appreciate it, because over 20 Border Patrol agents, over 20 CBP agents have died from COVID and in the line of duty deaths. And it's not just COVID, it's TB. You know, they take these measles and chickenpox, they take it home to their families. So Border Patrol agents are in a tough spot. And as far as the previous from Senator Graham, I can answer some of the questions. The DHS said they gave a number of 55,000 released order to report to ICE. Actually, 166,000 aliens have been released to the United States. And it's actually over 63,000 that have released and said, well, we'll leave it up to you to report to ICE. And very few of them are reporting to ICE. Out of the 102,000 released with NTAs, notice to appears to go to court, very few of them are showing up in court. That's the numbers. The numbers right now, yesterday, 1,000 illegal aliens were arrested on the border. Right now, Border Patrol had, 1,000 yesterday were released with a notice to report to ICE. 1,000 just yesterday. They arrested 7,000 illegal aliens just in one day yesterday. There are 800 children were arrested yesterday. There's 14,000 in custody of the Border Patrol right now. That's the numbers that the DHS is trying to hide from the American people.
Well, wow. Those are some serious numbers. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to call the White House? Call Joe Biden. Call the White House. Number is, let me look up that number. I want to give you the right number. The White House, WHIT, WHITE, White House. Here we go. The White House number is 202-456-1111. That's 202-456-1111. Now, if you want to call your congressman or your senator, it's 202-225. What is it? 225-1414. Let me look here. Let's see. Let me look here. I think that's the number. Hold on. 1414. Yeah. Uh-oh. Let's see here. Yeah, something like that. Let's see. 456-1414. That's the White House switchboard. I'm trying to look for the House of Representatives. 456-1111. Yeah. So 202-456-1111. That's the congressional and the the Senate and congressional switchboard. Check it out. Call. Make your feelings known. Tell them you're tired of these illegals coming across the border. And don't make any threats, though, like you're going to take matters into your own hands, even though you feel like it. Because I know I feel like it sometimes. But that's not going to happen. Hey, look, it was a great chance to have Angela on. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to cut away, and we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, here with Charles Butler and the reality check.